When I was 16 to 17 years old, I really enjoyed watching horsepower TV, and I still do enjoy watching these reruns. You can go on the Power Block TV website and watch these old shows, and I really enjoyed watching these. You see, they have a really nice shop. They always have a lift or a dyno, all the tools you could ever need, and there's good sponsorships who would help out with the show and advertise their tools and products and things. And I just really enjoyed watching these shows when I was younger, and getting into the cars. And of course, the Terminator Cobra was brand new in this time, and so this was a time where these cars were just coming out and they were seeing what they could do. These shows got me in the mood to work on my own cars. I really enjoyed working on my cars and watching the show and feeling like I could do anything that they're doing on the show. You know, they show you step by step how to do things, and of course there's a lot of reading manuals and learning on your own, but I really liked watching the shows and then working on my own cars. So on Power Block TV, the show Horsepower, Season 8, Episode 12, had this Terminator Cobra project that they were working on. And this is probably my favorite one to watch out of all of them, and I watched this one over and over again. You can see in the back there Mike Galley, and then forward Joe Elmore and Chuck Hansen were really good hosts for this show. They were all knowledgeable. You know that they know how to work on cars really well, and you could look up to these guys as older role models and work on your own projects. So getting back to the '03 Cobra that they were using in this episode, it was pretty significant. They started out with a baseline tune to see what the car was making, and it was very surprising that the car put down 364 horsepower, all stock. The reason why this baseline tune on the stock pulley Cobra was so exciting and surprising was because when they put this car on the rollers stock, the numbers were so impressive to what they had worked on before that it was just mind-boggling what a stock Cobra was going to do. Let's look back here at Joe's personal car. That's Chuck standing next to it, but it was Project Nightmare, and it dynoed with full bolt-ons at 208 horse. And here is a picture of Joe installing a Vortex supercharger on that car on one of the other episodes. And with this setup, although it was non-intercooled in this time, it put down 285 horse at the wheels, which is what a stock Mach 1 4-valve puts down on the dyno. I would think that that would be really hard for Joe to swallow, knowing that with full bolt-ons and a supercharger, everything they did to Project Nightmare was still not even close. It was still almost 100 horsepower less than what a stock Cobra put down. So that really shows what the Terminator was at this time. Yes, Joe's car was a 2-valve, and it was a non-PI 2-valve, and it started out with a 225 horse, pretty low output non-PI 4.6 liter. But the fact is they had done so much to his car in the past, and it had all this work into it with a fuel system that they added to it, and you know, the supercharger, the intake, everything, headers, it had everything done to it, and it was barely putting down, you know, 285 horse. And I don't know what it did when it was intercooled. I would think it was probably around the 300 mark, but still, that really shows what the Cobra was at this time. So I know that the people on this show like him were very impressed with the Cobra, and they had to look at that like, wow. Right out of the box, the Terminator's performance was incredible. So they go on to swap the pulleys out and do some dyno runs, and then they would change the belt and the pulley again and adjust the tune, and they came up with some final numbers that were pretty impressive. Now, these numbers were all without changing the intake or exhaust. So for those of you that know a lot about Terminators, they usually will dyno with a pulley, intake, exhaust tune, everything around 460 or so. And so back on the rollers, their final numbers with the 280 pulley was 427 at the wheels. And like I said, that's without exhaust or intake or anything. So most of that came from the power programmer. Changing the timing and everything was how they got most of the power out of that. But it did up the boost to about 15 pounds. On this episode, they also talked about the cylinder head problems that were on the cars with the engines built before November 2002. and they showed how you could go into the dealership and get that taken care of, maybe even have the whole head replaced. And if it had the recall, you would see this blue paint on it, which I know a few cars that had that. As a matter of fact, I almost bought an '03 zinc yellow Terminator with 7,000 miles on it. But because I had remembered this video, I had the owner look on the driver's side valve cover where the barcoded sticker is that they talk about in this video and find the build date of that engine, and it was September of '02. So I knew it had very high potential of having the problem, so I ended up turning it down and getting my red 10th anniversary Terminator that has the updated heads. But anyway, awesome video. I loved watching this Terminator and seeing it brand new, and I love to go back and rewatch this episode for fun. I'll put a link in the description to this video on their website where you can go watch it. I am curious to whatever happened to this car. There were 1,565 of these Terminators made in Red Fire, and it had the gray insert seats, so that's probably the majority of them. I've seen them with the parchment interior as well, so I'm not sure how many. In '04 had the black inserts on, but this was an '03. So I'm not sure if there's any way that somebody could find out whose license plate this was or have any idea whatever happened to the car. But if anybody watches this video and you know about the car, I'd love to know, just out of curiosity, to where it ended up. I believe their studio is in Tennessee, although I don't know where the car came from. But if anybody recognizes what state these plates are in, or I don't know if there's any way somebody could find out where this car is now or the history about it. But anyway, if anybody knows, let me know in the comments, because I'd be really excited to know. So anyway, really cool story. I love watching this video. I love seeing the Terminator brand new, what they were doing with it. It was so interesting to see what changing some timing and adding a little boost with different size pulleys could really do to one of these cars. It's a real big difference just to add 80 horsepower by changing some pulleys around. So that's really cool, and that's why the Terminator is so loved. It was a car that started a lot of that, you know, the new Hellcats and Demons and ZL1 Camaros, everything that's supercharged now. I think a lot of them followed suit from the Terminator and then the GT500s and what Ford did with that. So awesome video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos and stories. I'll leave you with a funny story that my friend had told me. He said that his friend who had a Trans Am WS6, 6-speed car, headers, 410s, everything, said he came in one day shaking a magazine in his hand and he was saying, "All they need is a pulley. That's all they need is a pulley, and they got me." And he slapped the magazine down on the counter, and I think it was a 5.0 magazine. And he was just upset that he knew that the Cobra was so ahead and all they had to do was change a pulley and it would totally have him. So, funny story.